Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome Jason Gagovski, drummer for Sweet Cobra, to the podcast. Sweet Cobra released Threes back in November of 2022, but the vinyl edition has recently become available. Jason walks through his long discography and musical history, launching a record label and how it's changed over the years, being an active band without releasing new music, and a lot more. We even talk about Fall Out Boy. If you dig the samples you hear in this episode, go check out Sweet Cobra. The band has an excellent discography, and it was a joy getting to discover it before chatting with Jason. Last Friday on Patreon, I posted an instant reaction review of Metallica's new album, 72 Seasons. There's also an Albums That Mattered podcast about the Ghost Inside's self-titled album. Patreon member Ben Pike said, "Thanks for that Ghost Inside episode. That was fucking raw and intense." $1 a month gets you both of those pods, plus early access to every episode of As the Story Grows. Join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Enjoy today's episode with Jason Gagovski of Sweet Cobra. Zoom re-implemented their 40-minute cap, and I was like, well, that's the end of that shit.
Yeah. I guess I forget about that because I work at the Field Museum as sort of one of my jobs and as my day job, and it seems endless, the Zooms are still right. So I do graphic design there, so I'm I go in sometimes, but I still am working offsite a lot. And they've got the big account, so we just we go over the hour mark. But man, it's nice to meet you. I appreciate you talking to me today.
Yeah, you too. It's cool to discover bands and then realize all the connections of going back through your discography. As much as the internet can be trusted, what I would assume is your career in music.
Yeah. Some of it's interesting because there's a line where a lot of it's tracked or seems to be more accurate, and then other stuff where it surprises me is pretty off of the radar. If I think about stuff I've done with my label, with Hawthorne Street Records, which was started by me and a childhood buddy of mine, John. But it's pretty much just me these days. But there are bands that we put out from Louisville and related to Young Widows and all that stuff. And some of that stuff seems obscure to me. It's not obscure to me, but it seems that if it came out 10 years ago or even a little less, it's not as out there. I notice. Yeah. In that way, people might have the records and stuff and enjoying them that way, which is cool too, for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's just hop in a time machine. You we'll start now. You're currently in Chicago.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Is that where you grew up?
I grew up about 40 miles from downtown. So I grew up in the Northwest Indiana area near the Indiana Dunes. Okay. So growing up there, that was always kind of it had its own scene there for sure. But it's always also been a satellite to Chicago. But when I was in high school and playing shows and stuff, there was a little bit of a dry spell, I feel for all ages venues. So we started booking our own shows there. I saw Naked Ray Gun and Peg Boy and all these Chicago bands pretty early on in high school, and they were just coming out and playing the community center or Valparaiso University and places like that. So through skateboarding and stuff, I started being at the skate park as a little kid, and being oh, there's a show, what's happening here after this, and so I started hearing local bands, and so I grew up in Chesterton, Indiana, which is near the Indiana Dunes, less than an hour from the city. There's a train that goes to it as well.
Nice. Nice. You mentioned skateboarding. Is that and the connection to shows? That's what got you into music?
Well, my older brother got me into music at a pretty young age, actually. I have an older brother who's about 7 years older than me. So that was sort of like, I was being exposed basically to like metal, heavy metal, like 80s metal, through my older brother. And so, I saw Iron Maiden at a pretty young age, like my parents me and my brother are first generation Americans. So like my parents are from Macedonia, but they met here. They met in the States. And so there were things that like we could get away with, I guess, maybe that like other parents would have been like. So my dad would just like take us to, Rosemont Horizon to see AC/DC or Iron Maiden and stuff like, and I was in elementary school and he would just sit in the parking lot and listen to WLS or listen to the radio. And he'd be like, all right, be out here by 10 o'clock. But to them, it wasn't like this scary thing. It was just like, they thought it was insane kind of, but they thought it was more just like comic book stuff, or like they didn't view it maybe as the way that other parents would have thought, oh, this is evil, or they saw the campiness or the larger than life sort of comic book escapism element to it. Like they didn't seem to be threatened by it, So so my older brother really got me into that stuff. But on that level, it was like they're up here, we're here. So my brother didn't really get into skateboarding. He played guitar. I started playing drums because he played guitar and I wanted to jam with him. So I started playing drums at a pretty young age, but totally like self-taught, but I started discovering like, through skateboarding, the scene of like punk and hardcore. And he wasn't as interested in that. And just because of our age difference, he went off to start doing his own thing and, playing in other kinds of bands. And he still plays guitar, plays in bands in the Sacramento area, but it's more just like not the kind of thing that we're doing, but it's really cool. I mean, he's the reason I started playing. But I started seeing bands at the skate park and started discovering like, oh, these dudes are just like playing on the floor, or then like, I was hearing, Misfits and Minor Threat and stuff like that, and realizing like, oh, there's like bands that are doing this stuff sort of still. And I started connecting the dots at a pretty young age because of skateboarding, hearing stuff in skate videos, and then seeing bands playing on the floor, and then realizing like, oh, this is like a living, breathing thing, It's not necessarily always about the quality of it, and started meeting people from other towns and started getting up to the city to see shows. And I just tried to get really involved at a young age. I don't know why that is. I loved skateboarding. I loved playing drums. And in high school, I started doing a zine. I was helping my friend with a record label. We were booking shows. It was like, now that I look back at it, it's like, wow, I was really like, and a lot of my friends were doing a lot of stuff like that. That was like, I guess I was inspired by the people that came before me, like that were doing it in other places,
Yeah. It's like a special time when you like realize like there's these bands on MTV and at the arena, and then you see it here and you're like, oh, I can do this and be a part of it. And for people like us who go like head first, and you start the zines and you're like at all the local shows and booking shit, and it's just like you eat and breathe it.
And it's like I'm trying to think. I started playing once I got into high school. Really, I started playing with dudes that were in bands that I had seen, or like that were a couple of years older than me. There was a band, Leonard's Innards. They were like a local band that were like pretty big, and I'm still friends with those guys, but they really introduced me to a lot of stuff. And there was like a radio show at our high school that I would hear. So I would hear like Jesus Lizard, but I would hear Youth of Today and Slint and like Neurosis and all this stuff in the early to mid 90s. And so by the time I got to high school, like I knew these guys and they became my closest friends. And so I ended up like doing this radio show that like introduced me to a lot of that more obscure stuff. But I always did see the value of like the bigger stuff too, because it's what got me into playing music. I just felt like this like other place was like really my community, and like, and it's still something I'm involved with,
Yeah.
or feel like I'm involved with, at least with Sweet Cobra. And then like by the time, I think, so we played our first show out of town. I was in this really old band called Failsafe.
Yeah.
And we played with like Falling Forward and Endpoint, and I don't even know how we got on this show. We got asked to play this show in Bloomington, Indiana, which is about 3 hours south from where we grew up and where we lived. And so that was like my first out of town, 14, 15 years old, gotten in the van with these like, 18-year-olds. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, we drove here, we played, I was a kid, and it was just like full venue, Rhinos in Bloomington. And it was just a blast. And then, once I was done with high school, we would do little satellite things like that. We'd go to Chicago and play with Snapcase or, stuff like that at that time. But we started booking shows. Yeah, we booked like Turmoil, Coalesce. When it started to change and morph, we changed into Suicide Note was the band then. And, but we would bring like Guilt Through Town and By the Grace of God and, Turmoil, Converge. We became really close with the Converge guys in the mid-night, I guess, probably 95, 96. So my relationship with like Kurt and those dudes started a long time ago. Yeah. Because Kurt always recorded all the Suicide Note stuff. And then, Sweet Cobra kind of started as a project to all of our other bands. Remus was in other bands, like The Killing Tree and Baxter and that shared like members of Rise Against and stuff. And so we were all in all these other bands, but we all sort of came together once the Fireside Bowl started happening. That sort of was like a glue for all these people within an hour, or more in a lot of cases, but the real like local scene. So like, in like the 90s, I started playing with this band called Extinction, which was like just Chicago hardcore, straight edge dudes. Yeah. Pete Wentz was in the band for like our last record. And we toured a lot, as much as we could at the time. And so, there was just this core group of people, the kind of Chicago hardcore scene, I guess, that were always going to see like Damnation AD. And, there was like this certain genre of bands that were coming to the Fireside all the time. And so at a certain point, I think when I got done with design school down at IU in Bloomington, Remus was like, hey dude, we're going to start Sweet Cobra just as a fun band. Like, I want to play bass, because he's actually a drummer too. Remus is our front guy. Yeah. And so, we started jamming, probably 2003, I think, is when Sweet Cobra first started playing. And we've, morphed over the years, or, we're all in other bands and stuff. So at first it was really just this fun thing, but it all really was born out of like meeting at shows at the Fireside. Like, we became, friends with the Pelican guys at that time. So many folks that I'm still really close friends with, so that's really, really cool. That we all have that kind of common glue.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it weird to see Pete go from Extinction into Fall Out Boy and explode and be like recreate emo?
In some ways, yeah, but like I oftentimes tell people, like I remember like when they started the band, like, because I think I'm trying to think why Extinction was a little less busy. I think maybe one of our guitar players was starting to think, Niraj, I think, was thinking about going to Boston to join up for Hope Conspiracy. But at the time, actually, when it started happening, I was like, this totally makes sense to me, because I know, I knew Pete well at the time, and he was always like, had a lot of things going on. He's a little younger than us. But, he was always trying to make things happen. And they started that band, and he was like, dude, this band, like, we're going to try to take this as far as we can. And I remember going to see them and being like, oh, this is totally different. And I could see how people would really like latch onto this. The earlier stuff, but he was playing in another band right after Extinction called Arma Angelus. And then I was pretty much only doing Suicide Note, and Extinction did a couple reunions here and there at that time. But so he was playing in Arma, but he kind of had this seed planted for Fall Out Boy. So I could kind of see it, but I didn't really truly realize how big it was till till much later. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, this shit is huge, but it's really, really massive, you know? And like, that's really cool for those guys for sure.
Where did the name for Sweet Cobra come from?
Well, actually Niraj was our original. So we kind of started as the three of us. Then we were like, oh, it would be cool to have another guy on second guitar. And that's Niraj was coming back from Boston, and he was like, I'll play with you guys. So we had a set of songs written. The three of us kind of jammed a bunch, and then Niraj joined, and we started working on the first album. But we didn't have a name locked in yet. And actually, I think our first show was under like a different band name. We like took a vote at the Fireside. I think the first show we played, it was called Pistols at Dawn was the band name on the flyer. And it was like this crazy lineup. It was like Black Cross, Rise Against, you know, all these hardcore bands and stuff. But we knew we were going to change it. And so we always called Niraj Cobra. And he showed up with some new crazy guitar pedal, some looper pedal, which was like insane to us at the time, you know?
Yeah.
And like now it's like Grumpy's pedal board is this massive thing. But we were just like, Sweet Cobra, like, because we just called him Cobra. It was just like a dumb thing. And so we played the show and we had a vote. We were like, all right, we got three names. These are the three. And then everyone clapped for Sweet Cobra. So it was like, all right, I guess that's our band name.
Nice.
And so there are times where I feel like it fits us and other times where I feel like it doesn't, but the meaning is that it's basically named after Niraj.
Nice.
And then,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
It seemed like after Forever into Mercy, you guys really that's when the shift in sound started from more of a hardcore doom metal thing into more of what you guys are now. I think I don't want to say mellowed, but it seems like the sound is mellowed. What led to that change in shift in style?
I try to think about that sometimes. Like there are like some obvious factors on why, to me, like the first two records, I guess the intention was to keep it simple and sort of like stay in this lane, because part of that was because like we were all in other bands that were doing more experimental stuff, I think, too. So like with Suicide Note, the same thing kind of happened. We started as this really abrasive, heavy, kind of crazy band. And then over time, we were just like, well, growing up, you know, I liked a wide range of stuff. I liked, you know, Quicksand is a great example of something that influenced us to keep pushing our sound and take it more seriously and be creative with it. But like Praise and Forever, we were like, we're just going to be like heavy, and it's going to be like, you know, this could be in a skate video or something you would skate to. So by the time I think Mercy rolled around, we built up like a real chemistry, and it was less about a fun band to blow off steam with. And it started turning into like our actual creative outlet on, you know, what our influences were, other bands that we wanted to tour with and stuff. We never really felt like we fit totally in with the really, really heavy stuff. I think at first people were like, oh, this is like stoner metal. But, you know, I don't think that it is. I mean, if I listen to Caius and stuff like that, which I love, you know, I just didn't think we had that. We were like hardcore dudes that were just like playing whatever came to us, you know, as like four people in a room writing music together, and pushing each other, you know. So, you know, with Earth, the idea was like, we're going to go with like zero like implications of what we should sound like, you know, like no agenda, but knowing that when we sit down and play together, there's going to be a through line, you know. a friend of mine, Nick, the other day was like, hey man, I listened to Praise, our first record, and I listened to Threes the other day, and it's like wild to hear the difference. But there is also like this through line in certain songs, like Soft 11. I can hear something in like River of Crimson from the first record, but I get that it's like a different sonic experience. But some of my favorite bands are bands that have always sort of pushed that, like Cave In and stuff like that. It's just cool to see a band, you know, have fun and jam and want to be like pushing boundaries, I guess. But some of that, like from Mercy, from between Forever and Mercy, it wasn't like an intentional, like, all right, we're showing up with nothing, you know. Like we had a member at the time, Matt Arluck, who he was our second guitar player on Forever and on Mercy, and he was diagnosed with cancer in between that period. So he was going through that cancer battle during like Mercy, and eventually had to bow out of the band, and eventually unfortunately passed away. So when we started working on Earth, it was just like, you know, everything was like in cinders as far as the band goes. We were like, you know, we knew he wanted us to keep playing. You know, he joined the band and was like stoked to be in the band, and we knew that he wanted us to soldier on. But the idea was, this is like a serious thing now. You know, it's like, and I think it became a serious thing even before we knew about that. We just were realizing that, you know, we were putting time and energy into it. We were getting asked to play with like Mastodon and Kylesa and, you know, our friends in Coliseum and all these things. That was a really cool time. All these bands were incorporating, like, whatever, if you want to call it stoner metal, were incorporating alternative stuff. Like, you know, Fucked Up, Coliseum, all these bands were doing really cool stuff, I think, when we were still in our inception. And, you know, High on Fire is like, you know, we were lucky to open for them a few times. But like Russian Circles took us on some tours, and Pelican and stuff. And so we started to feel more like a kinship to that kind of thing, where we were obviously rooted in where we're from, but we were trying to like do something creative that we all wanted to keep pushing boundaries with.
Yeah. I mean, listening to Earth, and like, there's so much of it, especially the front half of the record, where I'm like, there's like feels like a heavy Pixies influence to me. Where I'm just like, like, and even some songs on Threes, I'm like, like, you guys listen to the Pixies, like.
Yeah, that's cool that you picked up on that. Yeah. But that was really, and I was a huge Frank Black and the Catholics fan, like huge. Like I really love that stuff and got to see them a few times. And I would always love when they would like take Pixie songs and like break them apart and create these crazy jams out of them, like Gouge Away and stuff like that. It's like, whoa, so cool to hear the Catholics do it, you know? So yeah, it definitely, like, we kind of had this side band in the early 2000s with all the guys I grew up playing with from Failsafe and Suicide Note. It was called Old Devil Moon, and it was pretty much like an homage to the Pixies, you know, like, or like the early Frank Black, like solo records, you know, like Teenager of the Year, and I really dug that stuff too. Again, that's another influence that crept in, hearing the early Frank Black stuff, where you're just like, every song's different and it's insane, you know. And the musicianship is really like next level too. Yeah.
What led to the time in between releases with Earth in 2015 and then just getting to Threes last year?
Well, so let me think about this. Yeah, we put Earth out in late 15, I think. And we started doing some shows on it. We did a little tour with Mutoid Man, and we were doing a lot of shows with the Life and Times. Definitely a favorite of ours and great friends of ours. They were involved with some of the recording of Threes, Alan Epley and Eric from the Life and Times. But, you know, we honestly started working on the demos for Threes like pretty much a year and a half after Earth came out. And again, it was the kind of thing where we just were jamming and we were like, hey, can we come to you guys' studio and lay some stuff down? So we did a split with Young Widows at that time. It was a live thing, but it was like multi-track recorded. by one of Matt's guys, Aaron from Earth Analog, and then Kurt Ballou mixed it. So like we wanted to leave a little room for that thing to come out. I was doing a lot with the label. I put out like the first J Jail record, and you know, Sweet Cobra was regionally doing a lot of stuff at that time. I know on paper it looks like a long spread, but we did a split 7-inch with Mile Marker. We did a split with Young Widows. And I'm sure there's other things I'm forgetting about, a couple covers and stuff like that. But let's see. I also did like, I was doing some drumming with Cloakroom as they needed it. You know, they're some of our closest friends, and I grew up with their drummer. And so did a pretty big European tour with them in 2017 and some East Coast stuff. But yeah, it wasn't like an intentional thing. So we started working on the recording, not knowing what it was. We recorded some demos with Al and Eric, probably in 2017. Then like 2018, 2019, we started being like, oh, well, we should go down to Earth and just hang out and have practice and like throw some mics up and record. So the way the record was kind of done was like, it seems like crazy that it was in this piecemeal, but really we would get together, we would kind of write a song, or like we'd have an idea of a song, we would all work on it, and then we would track it. And then later, you know, Tim was working on the lyrics for it. So like we did like 3 sessions, you know, and it's like crazy because when I went to go to do the liner notes, I'm like, this looks like a crazy long thing, but there were these massive breaks in between. Like we weren't like laboring over it and doing tons of overdubs or anything. We were we would record a song, and then like 3 months later we'd go down and record another song. And, but all the while we were like active and busy. And then at a certain point I was like, dudes, I think we have like a record here, man. Like we should probably send all this shit to Kurt and make him figure out how to mix it, you know? And, but we wanted, so we did like a few songs that ended up from the demos with Al and Eric at Electronical. And then but most of it was done at Earth Analog. And even some of the stuff from Electronical, we did a little like extra guitars on, or would drop the guitars out, add new guitars. But really that stuff is pretty, the vocals and stuff, some of those are like the first, second takes of the songs. Like Wet Brain, that was like supposed to be like a demo really. And we started trying to like record it for real. And it was just didn't sound like it did. And that's the day, the day that it's like on the recording is like the day that we learned it. And like we played it 3 or 4 times and then tracked it, you know? So to answer the question, then the pandemic happened. So I think in February of 2020, once it was done and mastered, there was also a period where like we kind of like had to wait periods where, because Matt was doing stuff with Hum. We actually did some shows with Hum, which was really special for us growing up around here, to be influenced by them and to become friends with Matt and have him play on our record and invite us out. So we did a little run to like Gainesville Fest with them and back. So we would have to like sort of wait a little while for him to be available, or wait for Kurt to be available. So there's some of that happening too in there. And then we knew we wanted Magnus, you know, from Cult of Luna to master it. And so once we got everything, it was like February of 2020, and I sent it around to a few labels, and then it was like, after that, it just kind of felt wrong to put something out to me personally, but I was loving that other bands were doing it. You know, like I loved that Hum just dropped a record and Shiner just dropped a record. And like, I started getting that point where I'm like, oh shit, we need to put this out. Like this needs to come out. And then it was like, well, you're going to wait, you know, a year for the pressing plant. So that was an unexpected extra year, basically, that it was kind of like, well, at first it felt weird to put something out. And then I was like, everybody's at home. Everybody's like hungry for art and music. And so I think we put out a Songs Ohio cover we had been sitting on. And, but by that time, once we realized we should have been getting it going, it was just a manufacturing, you know, issue really.
when did you start Hawthorne Street?
We started Hawthorne Street in 99, kind of 2000. There were two things that were part of that. So a really good friend of mine did a label called Stability Records, and he put out like a Bloodlet 7-inch, and Burst of Silence, this Canadian band who I think there's dudes that were in The Cursed and stuff. They went on to be in Left 4 Dead and some of these Canadian hardcore bands. Put out a Burst of Silence record. So once he stopped doing the label, but he had all these covers for the Bloodlet record. So while that was happening, I had gone out from Bloomington, Indiana to Erie, Pennsylvania to see Dead Guy. And they were one of my favorite bands. And I had never seen them. And I was like, they canceled a few shows or couldn't make it to Chicago. And I was like, dude, we got to go see Dead Guy, man. Like, so we drove through all these insane blizzards and stuff and get to the show. And it was great. They're like totally, and this was like the 10-inch lineup. I don't know if how familiar you are with them, but huge fan of all their stuff and all their other bands. But we got like this 10-inch era of Screaming With the Dead Guy Quintet, and it was great. They went insane. And at the end of the show, we were like talking to Dave, the drummer, and he was like, I can't believe you guys drove here. And I'm like, yeah, dude, like they hadn't really played the Midwest. So he was like, hey, when you guys get back, like, I'm going to send you this live recording of us playing at CBGB's. It sounds really good. You should just put it out. And we were like, aren't you guys on Victory? Like, and he's like, yeah, just put it out. Like, we're not going to be on Victory anymore. And so we got home the next day, and he had sent us the stuff and then sent me a master CD of it. And wow. So I was like, well, hey man, like, they're serious. And they had a Black Sabbath cover that was supposed to be on Hydra Head, part of that 7-inch series. And they got a cease and desist. So like, you know, the thing that Cave In and Botch and all those bands are on. Yeah. So they were like, we can put this real record, you know, like a non-live recording at the end, and like, we'll just get it out. And so I hit up my friend at Stability, and I was like, dude, can we license another, 800 copies of this 7-inch, buy your covers, and then we'll put out the Dead Guy, I Know Your Tragedy all at once. And and so that's what we did. My friend John and I pooled together money. John had some money, and we started there. Then it like kind of immediately went to like putting out bands of like that we were around, that we were like playing shows with, like Lit Golden Sky. It was a place for me to be able to put stuff out for all of my projects. The Deadly, those are like Turmoil guys. So really, like the first few releases are like from being friends with the guys in Turmoil. So the Deadly was one of their bands. Lit Golden Sky was one of their bands. Then it kind of shifted over into Louisville stuff through playing with, Breathe or Resist and National Acrobat. I got to know Evan and Ryan really well. Still really close friends with those guys. And so that's when we did like the Suicide Note Breather split. And we just kind of put things out. It's almost like there was a period of time where we were trying to run it like more consistently. And it just got to a point where it felt like we either need to like have huge distribution or it needs to be like more of like a special limited kind of run thing. Just because like we had released some Life and Times vinyl, reissued some Pelican stuff. We're putting out Your Black Star, Brain Banger, which is like a couple of the guys from Young Widows, Sweet Cobra Forever. Like all that shit came out at once. And it was like, oh man, like we have a lot of money out there. And the distribution thing at that time was like kind of difficult. Distros would just close and not pay us. Like there was a big one who we were exclusive with, and we took a big hit when that happened. And so now it's a lot easier just because we press a certain amount, we send them to one place. We can trust Cobra Side, we can trust, Revelation. Certainly there's tons of others, but there are certain ones at the time that are no longer around anymore that just straight up didn't pay us. And so went out of business and never paid us. So it turned more into like, okay, like I want to do, like a Sweet Cobra Young Widows split. with Three Floyds, and we're just going to do 500, and then it'll be on Spotify. And so now it's like, as friends have projects come along, or it's like kind of turned into that kind of thing where we do it when the time's right to do it.
Yeah. Is it weird to watch like the whole industry shift in such a fast time, where like Spotify has overtaken everything, and you have Bandcamp on the artist side, and cassettes are back in fashion now? Like,
yeah,
I mean, I love
it's
cassettes,
crazy.
but
It's crazy. Yeah, because like part of it's like I've just been kind of in this same band throughout a lot of this stuff, and like done a label throughout a lot of it. I will say that like initially with the digital thing, Revelation was always our distributor for that stuff, and we always at first were comfortable with iTunes. I don't know why. It's just for some reason we trusted it. We were like, okay, like so we were doing vinyl, CD, and this would have been like 10 years ago, or a little even more, even like 2008. 7. So iTunes is about the only one. And so when these other things started coming along, we were like, I mean, other than Bandcamp, but like Spotify, we were like, no. I was like, how much are we getting from this? Like, this seems crazy. Like, what is this even?
Fucking criminal.
Now, yeah. Like, and so now I'm like, now it's the kind of thing where I can see there are certain bands that don't have, are unknown to people because it didn't traverse that. And I like, or other bands that are on other labels, I'll go onto Spotify and be like, how does my band have more listens than this? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Not that that's like a tell for the size of a band, or not like the be all and all of a tell for something like that. But it is interesting to see. And now the struggle for us is like, well, okay, this is the way we got to do it. So going back and getting all this stuff reissued onto Spotify is something like a long-term project I've been working on, just to have it available on all the platforms.
Yeah.
And Brent from Magic Bullet has helped us a lot with that, but it's such a process, to get that stuff up and available. But at this point, it seems like the best way to have the music accessible, which is the most important thing,
Yeah. You guys just released the video for Wet Brain. The vinyl is finally ready. Is the vinyl ready, or is it coming soon? It's finally ready.
The vinyl's ready. Yeah. People have been getting them for a few weeks, actually. Yeah, for a few weeks. They went straight to our online store, to the merch table. So I actually feel like in early February it started shipping around.
Nice.
So our friend Bobby from Cloakroom, he does a thing called Documa Vision, which is really cool because sometimes he plays shows as Documa, he plays guitar and has like a visual sonic experience with samples and stuff. So he's like really close. We're all really close with those guys, and we knew we wanted to do something when the vinyl dropped, because we kind of did like the digital release with the video, and so he came up to where we usually practice, and we just filmed some stuff, and he had fun with it and did his thing. But I always love working with him. Any reason to collaborate with him is always fun.
Yeah, I saw someone else who runs a label today. They posted they were at a thrift store and there was like a stack of Adele records, and they were like, "You fucked up manufacturing for a year, and now all your records are at the thrift store."
Oh wow, that's crazy!
It was crazy. Yeah.
You expect to start seeing that stuff somewhere, right? Like,
right.
They all can't be selling. When you go into a Target and there's like a vinyl display, which part of me was like, oh, this is cool. I remember going into Kmart and like seeing, Metallica and Justice for All. But like at the same time, I'm like, it's a different world now. Like, how many of these are actually selling? I don't know, but that is a bummer. Yeah, it was. I kind of figured it was going to happen. I was like, man, there's going to be a lot of people that want to put their stuff out. I just didn't think it would be quite that long of a delay,
Yeah.
But it's at this point, it's like normal to have that kind of delay. I think things are catching up a little bit, which is cool.
Yeah.
So bands can hit the road and stuff like that.
Yeah. Does Sweet Cobra have touring plans for this year? Are you guys working on new music since it's been so long since you wrote and recorded this album?
Yeah. So, we've got a few out of town shows in the works now, just smaller things. But we're hoping this year to like go out and do a few runs. Definitely. We played a show with Earthless, Scorched Tundra Fest like last fall, and we talked to them about doing something, and we talked to like just other friends of ours, bands that are like, we're going to be doing this or we're going to be doing that. So not totally sure yet what will materialize, but we've definitely been letting folks know that we would be available to do some shows. And for the time being, we're just kind of trying to focus on booking our own kind of regional stuff. Milwaukee, Indy, Louisville, stuff like that, Chicago, of course. But yeah, this year, you know, with having the record finally come out, we definitely got to do some stuff. Yeah, I'm just like, we're all so stoked that this thing's finally out. It's like, so we already actually have like written three other tunes. So the idea is, like you're saying, to pick back up on that, is that like, we're trying to get something out much sooner this time. So during the pandemic, we just like, we all live within a few miles of each other. So we kind of had our little bubble and wrote about 3 or 4 songs, and just, we were hanging out and playing, but just to ourselves, you know, like open the garage door, put some fans on before we knew like what the hell was going on with it.
Right.
So we do have some things that we wrote like in the thick of that are of course even different than the other stuff. So
no, I'm sure.
Hopefully we'll like toward the end of the year, we can get down to earth and track some stuff.
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.